just talk about what is available for the FileHold Viewer. That seems obvious, but it requires the Level 2 viewer license. So if you don't have any Level 2 licenses, then that's something you'll need to take a look at before you'll be able to use the assembly function. It's also worth saying that the Level 2 viewer can be assigned. So it's not like you have to get them for every single user. If you only have a couple of users who are power users who need the assembly function, you can assign them that ability, and others are just able to look at documents using the Level 1 viewer. So you need to actually deploy that against the user in order to have that functionality. Now, it's only available for documents that can be viewed by the Level 2 or the Level 3 viewer. So if you're dealing with documents that are not viewer Level 2 or Level 3 compatible, then you're not going to be able to use the viewer for assembly. If the viewer can't open it, then we won't be able to assemble it. There are some options when we do document assembly, and we're going to cover some of them. Others we're just going to mention in brief as we look at the module for it. So you can use it to create either a standalone document or a single merge document with bookmarks. And what that means is when we take multiple documents to assemble them, we're going to put a bookmark in between them so we actually mark the differences between the documents. However, we can also use the same assembly function to create a single standalone document because there's some other processes that we can do as a document moves through assembly. So there's nothing that says it has to be multiple documents, even though we use the term assemble documents. We could actually be doing the document assembly on a single document. And this because we can do things like we can append or prepend documents with template documents of your own design. So if you had a cover sheet, if you had fax transmission documents, those kind of style documents, those can be built into the assembly process. So you can have them standardized to be able to do a standard document at the beginning or at the end of it that you want to attach to it, and how you identify those. We won't be covering this today because we don't do a lot of appending with it. We don't seem to get a lot of requests for that in the training, but it is a powerful function and it's out there, and it might make sense for part of the use case actually I'm going to describe today. We can also use merge tags and converter templates to put document information into output documents. So if you've used the document convert to PDF function that we have with workflow, and we've done a video on that before. We did a tutorial a couple months back about creating those PDF cover sheets. We can use merge tag information the exact same way with a converter template to put information into that cover sheet. So it's not just about having a cover sheet onto the document, it's also about putting document information into it. This is why having a single document might make a lot of sense for assembly, because in fact what we're doing is we're taking multiple pieces of information and attaching them into a cover sheet that then goes with the document. So even though it's one document, we're going to use that converter template to convert that information to something more useful. We can also apply watermarks, PDF security options, or even create temporary documents for viewing, even though it's not going to be the output document. So we have lots more options than just doing one or two things. And I'm going to cover that today when we look at the function for it. So with all of that, let's go and take a dive into document assembly. So let's just escape out of my PowerPoint here, and I'll minimize that. And we're going to go over, and we're going to start off with, we're going to be over in FileHold, and I just want to describe what our use case is today. So what I want to do is I want to create an assembly of multiple documents related to a particular purchase order. So, this will be the original purchase order, the sales order that came in, the invoice for the document, and the bill of lading from the goods that were received. So I want to take those 4 documents and bind them together, and then be able to send them to a third party if I wanted to using Courier. So that's kind of my use case for what I want to create within the system. Now, before I do anything else, I want to point out I'm logged in right now as Chris. Let's take a jump over to my web administration panel. And then from here, we're going to take a look at my user roles that I have in the system. Sorry, it looks like my Firefox is a little bit slow today, so that's okay. Go over to my users list. So it's going to populate for me, because what I want to do is I want to make sure I've got a level 2 viewer assigned to me. And this will also take me through the process of showing you how you would assign a level 2 viewer. If you're curious to know about what you have for your licensing, you can always go over to your license information, of course, or take a look at your utilization. But in this case, we're going to scroll down to me over here, and we're going to see that I've actually got a level 3 viewer. So I have redaction enabled for me. So I'd be able to use this. My demo user account down here, which is currently disabled, but if it was enabled, then they would also be able to do document assembly. Whereas Arthur over here only has a level 1 viewer, and so Arthur would not be able to do that, but would be able to see output documents that I'm making with the viewer inside of their FileHold, and they'd be able to access it that way. So again, there's some tools there that are available for them for the assembly function. All right, so because I know I've got the right level of license, that's all I actually need to check over here. we can go back into FileHold, and now we can start to work on our assembly. So before I do anything else, I want to gather my documents together, and I'm going to do that using a search. Now, of course, I could come over to here, and I could click on search, and then I could go to advanced, and I could filter through my information. But what I'd rather do is just go to my pre-built save search over here. I almost say quick search. This one isn't a quick search. This is just a basic search looking for PO number, but the PO number that I'm looking for is under my common metadata fields. So I can go down to where's my PO number? It should be on here. Oh, I've already selected PO number, so it won't appear on the list. Haha. But this is my common metadata field list. So this is not saying I'm looking for, if I go to bill of lading, we'll see I've got a PO number over here. If I do this search, now I'm looking for only the bill of lading PO numbers. What I really want to do is say, show me all documents, regardless of what schema it is, and find for me the PO number regardless of schema. So now that I've got that save search built, and I know I just recreated it, but I want to show you what's built into that. We're going to type in our PO number that I'm looking for, very cleverly 123456, and I hit enter, and it pulls 4 documents for me. Now you can see that it's pulled this from all over my library. So sales orders, Oliver Chris, manufacturing POs 2022, accounting, AP 2022, manufacturing, shipping and receiving 2022. So I know that I'm looking for this in all parts of the library. So first thing to mention is you want to make sure that your user has rights to see all of those documents. Secondly, we want to make sure that there's no restrictions on these documents. We want to make sure there's nothing like the document is hidden because it has to go through a workflow process. In this case, some of these documents do. And so if I was to select this one, for example, we'll see that this document has not gone through a workflow. The purchase order, on the other hand, I think has gone through a workflow and it has an approval mark on it. So I can see that it's gone through some sort of recognition that it was approved in its process. So great. So here's my documents. These are all gathered together. Now what I want to do is I want to merge these together into a single new document using the assemble function. So to do that, I could select one document, right-click onto it, and I could go to document assembly, so publish as, assemble to PDF, or I can select multiple documents together and right-click on them and then do again, assemble to PDF, or I can select my multiple documents and then up here I've got an assemble button, which does the exact same thing. And by clicking this, it's going to open up my assemble documents dialog. So now I've got this screen, there's multiple tabs, and I'm going to take you through each one of these, but it's actually pretty simple as to what's going to happen. So the first thing is, do not merge documents. I could be doing an output of 4 different documents as each one of them going through the process to output 4 documents at the end. But in this case, I actually want to merge all these documents into one. I want to make a single PDF from FileHold just to bind all this information together. I can then reorder the documents if I want to. Now, for the most part, it's going to remember the order that you had on screen, but let's just double check that by going into the reorder. So in this case, right now I've got sales order, purchase order, invoice, bill of lading. And if that's an acceptable order for me, then I would do that. But maybe in this case, I say, you know what? This purchase order was the first thing that happened. That's what kicked off the process. So the sales order is second, the invoice when it was received is here. Now the bill of lading comes in before the invoice, so we're going to put that here. So now I've got an order for these into the way that I like. Notice that it's also specifying the ID number onto these. So I could be pulling prior versions into this if that was important to me. So again, how you want to organize your documents for assembly is totally up to you. Now I can also change the output document name up here if I wanted to. So I could say, here's, PO 123456 master file. But that's not going to work for me in this case. And here's why. When we do the output for the document, I'm just going to clear that and we're going to close this. And then I'm going to double check this over here. So it doesn't matter what I put in for this for the name. When I run documents through the assembly process, whatever my first document is going to be the schema for my output. My schema has and it's also going to preserve the metadata from my first document, both of which are important details. So when I produce this document, the output document is going to capture that information, and it's going to the output document will have the same schema and the same metadata, and because my schema has a naming convention on it, it's going to give it the schema name based on the metadata. So in that case, then I want to make sure that the document that I'm using here is the correct one for the schema and the metadata output that I want. So I think this is ideal now. So I'm going to close this, and now we are going to go to our next tab, which is the output. So where do I want this document to land? Well, you can see over here I've got export for clients and Oliver Chris. So that's where I want to send this. So I'm going to choose my output location. Now again, if I had an auto tagging rule onto that, that might also apply for my output. So I want to be careful with this as I'm using it. Now I can create a temporary document for the viewing. I'm not going to do that because I don't need to view this. I'm going to open this in my viewer later on, but I don't need to create a temporary one at this point. And I can also check this in as a new version of the document. So I could be overwriting my original document, the first document in that cycle, and have this as a new version. I don't want that. I want this to be a brand new version. So that's what I'm going to select. We can also choose what the output's going to be for this. Now, it's going to be a PDF. We understand that that's going to be the output from the viewer, but you see I've got lots of PDF-A options over here, and we highly recommend that if you do need something for a PDF-A standard, if it's part of your requirement, that before you do a lot of assembly jobs, that you do a couple of test jobs first and verify with whatever software you need that the formatting matches your needs. We want to make sure that if we're saying it's a PDF A1A, that you're getting a PDF A1A output. But in this case, I'm just going to choose my standard PDF. My next option over here is to go to my assembly options. And here's where I can do my, my template page for the append or the template page for my prepend. So I can put it at the front or the back of it, and I can use this to locate the document that I want. And this is usually done through a search. So I would locate my document into here, tag any metadata for it that I needed to, including merge tags, and process it through that way. Now I can also process the tags for the input documents from here, and then this will then let me know what my delimiters are. We usually use the square bracket for our delimiter, but you can choose something else if that's important. Next tab over is watermarks. Now I have some pre-built watermarks. So for example, I can do the top of the document will have the name to it. In the middle of the document, I might have a draft across the center. These are watermarks that I've built into my system, and so I can choose from these. I could also choose a custom watermark using this input. If you've used this before, then you know this is a little tricky, but you can build a custom watermark if you need something ad hoc and quick. But typically speaking, we recommend using a template for it first, because it makes sure you have the right information onto the document. So I'm going to cancel that because I'm just going to keep my top document name watermark. We're going to keep that burned onto it, but I'm not going to use anything for my center. I don't think it's going to let me take that off. Actually, I just realized that's a bit of an issue. Let me just... that's something I should point out to my team, that once I select this, I'm not able to, there we go, just select above it, and then I was able to get that cleared. Perfect. So I'm just going to do the top document name as part of my watermarking for the document. All right, next one over, PDF options. These are where I can turn things on or off for permissions. So when you create a PDF, you could say that you're going to block it from being assembled into another document. And now that's not going to be allowed in another system. Allow content copying, I can turn that off so no one can copy text within the document. Now this is often controlled with the PDF-A status, but in this case, I'm just going to leave all of these turned on, and I'm certainly not going to put a password onto it, although nice to know it's an option onto here. The last one on here is any actions that I might want to do, such as opening the finished document in the viewer. So once it's finished the assembly process, it's going to automatically open in the viewer, but I'm not going to use this because I'm going to manually open it because I want to talk about other materials first. And our last thing on here is a summary that shows us what's going to happen. So the input is 4 selected documents, assemble into one new file. Output, the assembled files be added as a new document to sales export for clients. Oliver Chris in a PDF format, and the top document name global watermark will be added to the top of every page. So that's everything I need to do for my assembly. You can look at lots of different processes into that, but that's a quick overview of what I want to do when I'm executing my assembly. Now FileHold will remember my settings the next time I do this. So if you did a bunch of customized options into this, it will usually remember that between versions when you're dealing with the same schema. Because I'm dealing with documents of different schema, it may not remember that between. So again, your usage may vary. It depends on what version you're using. But we'll go ahead now and we'll do an assemble onto this. So now it's going to let me know some validation errors were found because the output document name was empty or invalid. So I'm just going to put test into here. We're going to close that. So again, we've got some error correction into that. And we're going to do our assembly now. and the assemble job has been successfully initiated. So we've got some information here. This is next in the queue because I don't have a big queue of assembly functions to happen. We're going to do an assemble. It's got a queued time, document assembly, username, etc. I could cancel or pause the job. I can go into the details for the job if I wanted to. If I wanted to see any more of those, again, just takes me back to that same screen as before. We're all good. I'm going to close that out. And we've now gained a new document now under export for clients over here, which has the same matching name as my sales order document, which was on the top of the pile. And it's copied all of the metadata over to it, but we can see it matches the timestamp as to when I did the assembly. So that's now been completed. So we've now done our job. Now you may have seen down here in the bottom corner, there's a button called Batch Jobs. This has to do with your document assembly function. So when I click this shows me a list of all my different batches that I've run. You see I've done some testing earlier today just to prep for the webinar. So we can see each of those are listed into here. Now you'll remember that I put test in for the file name, but it's kept it as this name over here. And that's because there's a naming convention on this document. Even if I right click it, I can't rename it from here because the naming convention is controlled by the schema using the document metadata. Because the metadata was copied over and because it's part of this schema, it's preserved the document over here. Now, because it's also got a tag in here for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the PO number, which we'll see right down here, we know, for example, that this document is now in the system and saved over here. So we're going to now move over to our folder. Here's where our document is living. And then from here, we're going to change its schema. So I'm going to reclassify this now from sales order form to sales package. So this is my document type, and because I'm using the PO number and the customer name as the common metadata fields, I'm going to save that, reclassify as the document, and I've also renamed the document using those pieces of information. So I wanted the sales order as the first document in my process because it had common metadata fields that I was going to copy over to my sales package document. And now that I've done that, I can right click on my document if I wanted to, go down to Courier, and initiate my external review. And now I can transmit this document out to a third party if I wanted to, for them to be able to take a look at. In this case, I have this pre-built into here, so review of attached document. But you can see this process would work for me able to launch this document off into Courier so that somebody who is going to receive it can receive it straight away. And that's essentially what the assemble process is built around. Now, there's a lot more things we could obviously do with that, such as using those prepend pages. It's the same process that we did with the documents when we're doing through workflow. So it's easy enough to create a cover sheet for a document and an end sheet for it if you wanted to do a sandwich for it, and it's able to create it through. I also mentioned before that we had bookmarks built into this. I want to show you what I mean by that. I'm going to right click on my document. We're going to open this up in the FileHold Viewer, which appears down below. I'm going to undock this to make it a bit bigger for myself. The viewer is going to load the document, and we're going to see a tab. And if you've not seen this before, I've got a bookmarks tab over here. So now I can scroll through and I can see each of my sheets for these in the system. So here's my first sheet with the document name at the top. Here's my second sheet, document name at the top. That's part of that watermark I added into there. And I can see the different watermark elements for this. I can see, so here's, for example, an invoice that actually had a cover sheet built into it. So again, part of that PO, bill of lading, there's more of my documents coming through as part of my assembly function. So I can see all of my documents there. And I've also got bookmarks here. So I can jump between these documents if I need to. So I can hop over to the bill of lading if I wanted to and see that more straight away within my viewer. So again, we've got that as a bookmarked document. So it's not just producing a flat file document, it's also bookmarked, and as well too, it's kept everything in here like the text that was scanned when this document was run through Capture, so I can still pull that information out. So again, we're pulling all those different elements in the order that I wanted them to be.